Welcome back to Moon to Moon. This is episode 204, Living Emergence with astrologer Sabrina Monarch. Sabrina is no stranger to Moon to Moon. We have a lot of fun when we talk, and we love to dive in deep and say the honest words. So I'm excited for you to receive this conversation. I'm going to introduce Sabrina in just a minute. First, I want to touch base with you with some updates and some reminders about things going on in my learning spaces. So, as you may or may not know, I have a new space. I have a new door. I have a new building. I was thinking about it today, and I was feeling into the fun that I have in providing spaces, structures that you can enter, like buildings, and how much fun it is for me to imagine a place that I would like to be inside. And imagine a place for people I love to be inside, people I admire, people I love to support. I'm never imagining like specific people because I've always found that what is most supportive to me in my creative process is really just to imagine my younger self and just trust that we're also connected through resonance, and that if I'm building a place for my younger self to go and explore and get messy and meet people or find quiet corners, like a structure that has all kinds of rooms in it for whatever I might be feeling into in that particular cycle and season that I'm in. And it's like that feeling of being like, I'm so happy this space exists because of what I can find here and who I become here and what being here brings out of me. Um, it's like the space itself is creating the experience. And my job is to just be curious and follow the impulses that are guiding me. And so I've created a whole new space, and it's called Living Emergence. And it's a place that you can come and stay for as long as you like, as long as it's supporting you. You can leave and come back to it. It's a place that's going to be there. It's going to be there. And you belong to it because you want to see what's on the other side of the door, and you want to go explore there and see what happens. See what happens to you. See what happens in your life. See what happens to horizons for you. See what happens to your story. And trusting that this is a space where transformation is happening. Like, it's happening all the time, and you're seeing it in the evidence of all the people that are there, just like you're seeing it in yourself. And I've always wanted to build a place like this. And I came to the timing in 2025. And so the grand opening of this space is November 4th. And I'm going to have a basically 2-week window through November 20th where you can come in. This is the opportunity to come in at the founder's level, the founder's pricing. we're coming in and, we're building here. Like you're going to come in and you're going to see evidence of like building. It's not a finished out space. It's not complete because it's not complete because you're not in it. You know what I mean? Like it will become complete over time as we play together there and as it expands and shifts through the aliveness of our relationships to it and the relationality of those that are in it. And as I am attuning to all of these things. So I'm hoping that those of you who feel called will come in. Remember that November 4th, there's going to be a lower price than the rest of that window. So it's an even lower price than what will be available after November 20th. So for all of you who are holding the question, like, is this for me? I would say it's for you if you're feeling called to it. Like that is the resonance that we're practicing here. And if you're feeling like you're called to it, but you're scared, like you're scared how the finances will work. You're scared you won't fit in. You're scared you'll be disappointed. Like we have so many fears and resistances to expansive experiences, to investments. And, that's part of what we're doing in there is we're learning how to hold ourselves through the fears and resistances that create limits for us. Learning how to be compassionate about that because these limits have intelligence. They're like swaddles. They keep us safe with what we know. We have many reasons why we set up these limits. And what we're doing in this space is practicing alchemizing these limits to expand them a little bit more so that we can be approachable to what is emerging for us now. What is the emergent invitation? The reason shame is such a big part of my work and the reason that it's going to be such a huge part of living emergence and unshaming is because shame is one of the comforts, and we return to shame because it's what we know. And so there's something to love in it. We can build a beautiful home inside the limits that were created from our shame. It's kind of like wild to think of it that way, but we do it all the time. Like I can look back in my past and recognize that even though I set up a lot of things from a traumatized place or from a place of addiction or from a place of deep fear of self-knowing, I still was able to create a lot of beauty there. I had beautiful experiences, created beauty for my children, created so much beauty from those places. So it's not a diss. But when I wanted to learn to expand, I had to let go of certain swaddles. And shame is a major swaddle, It's a swaddle we're always relating to because we can't unshame 100%. That's not going to happen. So it's a practice. And living emergence is a space to be in practice with yourself. And it has the complexity and the expansiveness to hold the seasonality of life. Your seasonality being different than somebody else's seasonality, and also holding the seasonality of astrology that's always shifting year to year, even as some things return. So it's just going to be, for those resonant and those who really take the leap, is going to be a space that it's not, there's no space for regretting the choice, you know? Will be on the timeline of, this is what is the expansive timeline of my life. And if it's no longer expanding you, then you can leave. That's how you know you're complete. Yeah, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. And everyone in Living Emergence is getting access to Moon to Moon, which is a $600 container. All the Mystics Making Monies that I have made and will make, including the one I'll be doing November 4th through 18th. That one's worth $75. They're all priced quite different. I'll be doing one of those this season that you get. Everybody gets Unshaming Your Chart. We'll be holding it live twice a year, come or don't come, according to your capacity and your interest, but that's a $400 offering. It's going to have Charting Your Course, which was 2222 the last time I ran it. That's going to be all in there, for especially for those of you who are newer to astrology. There's just going to be so many resources in there. And of course, there's the question mark of like the resource of the people there. There's the question mark of what it's like for you to be moving through the signs with me month to month, inviting you into Limit Alchemy. There's the resource of the planetary power-ups that we're going to be doing, which are going to be short, punchy power-up meetups where you have to participate. You are going to expand so much in being here. Like, molting and transformation is a given at micro to macro levels. For those of you who are in the marketplace with your gifts among mystics and magical folks and creative visionaries, you may find that the networks you create here are going to pay for the cost, like easy breezy. Easy breezy, you're getting your money back. Easy breezy. I'm going to be offering lots of opportunities to volunteer into your leadership here so that your name can be known and spoken and amplified in this space. I come to this kind of thing as a generous fountain. This is a place where you are filling your cup, and there's like not a fear here around like, will there be enough to fill the cups? Like, we are celebrating abundantly here, one another, in our power, in our gifts. It's for all the rightful baddies. And so that's why right now I'm hosting a free offer inside the demo space of Living Emergence called The 9 Boredoms of the Rightful Baddie. And that is going to be a 10 video series for free with a community forum. And I'm inviting you to come in and experience it before it disappears on November 21st. Would you like to find out what the 9 boredoms are? Links to everything will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much. The Mystics Making Money that I'm doing in November is going to be on Vulture Magic, this framework I created for life, death, life, and expanding sensation so that you can feel more of everything. And it's inspired by the Taurus-Scorpio axis. The themes are hunger, death, and the erotic, and how these can help you have a more abundant life, a more participatory, vigorous, even sexy life. And so this conversation with Sabrina Monarch is a beautiful kind of tap at the door of what the first Mystics Making Money held inside of Living Emergence will be, like vibe-wise. Because Sabrina and I, when we get together, we tend to like really tap at this kind of like erotic frequency, which is, I think, part, or maybe all, of why our conversations are so magnetic, because the erotic is extremely magnetic. And if you're interested in magnetism, personally and professionally, the erotic is a place to go. The place to go, question mark? It's a big one. We're playing with Mars and Venus polarity here, and Mars Venus relationality here, and courtship. And so let me give you the bio then of Sabrina Monarch so I can guide you now into this conversation. Sabrina Monarch guides people into a felt sense of astrology and an embodied life of soul within an intelligent, sentient, and enchanted cosmos. Her work arises from an enduring curiosity about what it means to be incarnate, serving those who long to surpass their limitations, expand, evolve, and ecstatically deepen into the pleasures available in every step of the journey. Rooted in over a decade of professional practice as an evolutionary astrologer, Sabrina's philosophy integrates spiritual depth with psychological insight and a reverence for wonder. Thank you so much, Sabrina. This was so much fun. It's always so much fun and invigorating to be in conversation with you. Listeners, enjoy. Welcome back to Moon, Sabrina Monarch. I love having you here.
Thank you, Britten. I am so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, each of our conversations have not only been some of my most favorite conversations, but also listeners' favorite conversations.
Love that. They always feel so alive. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I reached out to you to see if you would be interested in participating in this new series that I'm doing here called Living Emergence, which is both an idea / invitation that I'm inviting conversation around, as well as an actual place where I'm building a community expansion, aliveness space. So, yeah, I can talk a little bit about that to bring us in. So for me, emergence has been a big keyword for a few years now. And I've come to see it as having two dimensions. One is like a personal experience of emergence, where rather than trying to get to a version of ourselves that's like out there, that maybe from childhood we were trained to get towards. And I also think that we use the word potential to signify this future self that's going to have it all figured out and who won't have all the burdens that we have now. That emergence feels rather like an latent or kind of under the surface part of ourselves that's already inherent and already here. And in our becoming more approachable to them becoming visible, they reveal themselves. And so it's like the previously concealed becoming revealed, and like a blooming flower. And so then for me, the key piece is, how do I become approachable to that me that's already here? And I think of it almost like becoming approachable is like a stance or an attitude or like an energy to hold, like you would with an animal who is trying to decide if they can trust you. So that's where like the unshaming can be really, really helpful, because when we come to that part of ourselves in a disciplinary way, there's a sense of like clenching, so that emergent process isn't unfolding, because the softness isn't there, But the other piece is the collective piece, where emergence is related to bird murmuration and this idea that the local idiosyncratic part can affect the whole in the way that it changes the movement of the whole and the collectivity. And so in this way, personal emergence has collective impacts that matter. And it helps us understand that we are impacting no matter what even if we like the biggest despair and confusion is sometimes I think that people don't realize how they have impact. We it is just a fact for me that we do. So emergently, it feels like we can live into how we want to experience participating in our own impact in collectivities. So, what I'm seeing from playing around with this invitation is that every human being has gifts and lenses through which to understand that idea, that invitation. And what I'm enjoying about these conversations is just allowing living emergence to I'm hearing the word erupt, like erupt like newly with each human that I talk to about it, because everybody's living it differently and with these different lenses. So, yeah, I'm just going to see if anything came up for you with that.
So much. I almost paused you because I was so moved by what you were sharing. Yeah, like my body is like undulating right now, energetically. I think that, this part about becoming trustworthy to that like animal essence that wants to emerge was so romantic sounding to me. Like I have Pluto aspecting almost everything in my chart. And so I felt, this sense of that primal, raw aliveness when you are participating in like the mating call of nature, because I
Whoa.
think that like humans and I get here like if I'm mental or in my anxiety about it, it's like, is this going to work out for me? Am I going to find my person? Should I get on the apps? What should I do? How can I make the thing happen? I'm like trying to get really controlled about things versus when the experience dilates and you just feel like you're part of like the vibrating thrum of life and things start to align. Like to me, that's actually where things pop off and move in my life. And I've had to keep learning that over and over again that like I belong in society. I navigate like, the matrix, if you will. Like I don't think it's not real. Like all of these systems and structures are real, but I have found that they're not full of essence all of the time. Like sometimes they're just dry, right? And like if I start with the approach of essence first, or like cultivating that connection to that felt sense, that animal, that like wild energy, then there's like a synchronicity weaving between the material world and the basic mundane world. And so that just really lit me up. And yeah, like you spoke right to the center of something that matters a lot to me. And I almost had to pause you, but then I didn't.
A mating call. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're saying about the Matrix also being real. It's sort of like there's so many things like this where the one that's popping into my head is aging. Like it is real that we're getting older and there's some kind of loosening of what was taught, or there can be like decomposition processes that are real. But like concept aging is so constructed generally, and so many things are not real that we like think of as true. And when we can start poking at those things so that they lose their we lose our like trance spell with them, and come into a different relationship to our bodies moving through time, I think that that's an example of where we can become more approachable to our aliveness because we're not like trapping it according to the rules of aging that we were conditioned with. That's actually construct. So, um, yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. So my face has been changing lately. Like I see in the mirror that, yeah, the skin on my face has changed and I'm really loving it because it actually, my face is becoming a shape that I feel like I've wanted for many years almost. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, was I just, yeah, like it's cool. I'm sure there will be other moments of this process, but I'm just like looking at the way that my face composition has changed and being like, damn, like this is going in a good direction for me.
No, I feel like for sure I resonate with that. It's funny. My 16-year-old the other day was like, I wish I could have a bonier face like yours. My face is so puffy, and it
I
was
know
like,
my face
oh,
is
just
getting
I was
bonier
like, yeah, you're just gonna have to age. And she's like, I can't wait to age.
because I had, yeah, like these insecurities about my face shape from some time ago, and I just kind of got over it a while back. Like I did all these kind of internal processes to let it go. And then now I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, whoa, like my face is becoming the shape that I used to dream it was. And I didn't
Ooh,
do anything. I didn't get a surgery. I didn't like get some special facial. Like it's just happening. So
yeah. I do think when this is getting us closer to the topic of the erotic that we were going to speak it to as a lens for living emergence is that I think naturally because a lot of these boxes and like these prisons even that we get trapped inside in our more youthful years that were laid upon us and we didn't even maybe even know we were in a trap, um, as those things start to fall away, um, we become more approachable to this heat energy of the wildness. And so I feel like so much more can come through the face that maybe is possible to come through the face when you're younger, in your 20s, say, but there's so many like layers of garbage that we're like unable to kind of like see ourselves through that gauze. And then I feel like the 40s for me have been just like such a beauty time because there's so much heat that's like able to come through the more I just like release all of these distortions. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to talk to you about living emergence through the lens of the erotic. We've had conversations about the erotic a lot over the years, and I actually really fell deep into your work at the time that you were sharing that, like, maybe you had a membership or something, and you shared that this teaching you'd done on Eros, um, in astrology was now like in the space as a recording or something. And I think I DM'd you and just said, I just found out that Eros is on my ascendant.
of
And
course it is. That's for people
I
listening.
really,
That's why Britain, like the stuff that you put out, has that like zing to it of like it's seductive, and I feel like people want it, like because the way that you like embody and are sharing things, like it's hot, and people that have strong eros are really good with sparking desire. So
oh, well,
I
I
was
mean,
not
my younger
surprised.
self did not know this. I don't know if have I told you that I didn't have an orgasm till I was 39 years old. Have I ever told
No.
you that? Yeah, it's part of my story. Um, so yeah, that's part of the the midlife erotic that I'm in
Wow.
now. But yeah, you were so kind to just give me a price for the workshop itself, and I just devoured it. I'm curious if you would be willing to talk a little bit about Eros astrologically first, or maybe mythologically first, or both, to bring listeners into the archetype, And then we can just go from
Yeah, I
there.
would love to. So I did a lot of research on the, I guess, the myth of Eros, really. Like there is an asteroid Eros and there's an asteroid Psyche, but there's not a lot of like content on the astrological Eros. And I, yeah, researched the myth, and there's a lot of connections that I found across different symbol systems that repeated some of these patterns over and over again. So, for one, in the myth, um, Eros has, Cupid, he pierces people with these bows that make them fall in intense lust, love and lust mixed together. So, he creates the kind of like affliction of intense desire. And so, that feeling of the erotic, where we love maybe that sensation diffused or in dose, but when you have it like concentrated and intense, it's almost like a torture, to want something so badly and to feel just like insatiable. And that is his power, right? And so he falls in love with Psyche in this way, where Psyche is a human woman. She is the youngest of three sisters. Her two older sisters are not as pretty as she is, but they have been married off. Psyche is so beautiful that people are intimidated and no one wants to marry her. So she has this inherent kind of thing about her that is special, but she doesn't recognize it or know it, because her lived experience is that she's not getting married and what's going on. And so her parents, consult an oracle, and they're like, what do we do with her, kind of thing, because she's not getting married. And what's also been going on is that Aphrodite is upset, Venus, that people mistake Psyche for Venus. So Aphrodite sends her son, Eros, to kind of like, I'm getting the story a little bit mixed up, but basically the oracle says that Psyche needs to be married off to like a sea monster, some monster. And Aphrodite wants Eros to strike her with a bow so that she falls in love with a monster. And that's, her revenge and her pettiness against Psyche. And Eros goes on this errand and he just can't do it. So he takes Psyche instead and brings her home with him, but he doesn't let her see who he is. So they kind of consummate their relationship in the dark. And she, you know, he doesn't seem like a monster. He seems kind. And she's like falling in love with him, but doesn't really know who he is. Her sisters visit, and they are like, he's probably like a monster. You should totally turn on the light or like see who he is. And so this seeds some doubt in her mind, but also it kind of awakens a deeper desire to know the truth. And so she takes an oil lamp and sneaks up on Eros in the night. A little bit of the oil gets on his leg, wakes him up. She stumbles, pierces herself on one of his bows. They have this moment where he sees that she's broken his rule, and he just flies away right after she's been struck with the bow. So she sees the truth, sees that he is indeed a beautiful man and not a monster, and then she loses him, and he is just, off. And she's totally bereft at this point. And she goes through multiple trials, which I won't go into as much detail about. But she goes through all these trials to essentially get him back. And on a number of occasions, she almost dies or almost kills herself and forces a line to support her. But she's like in big damsel in distress kind of vibes, like totally at the end of her rope. And eventually, through the grace of all these different circumstances, brought back with Eros, they marry, and she's elevated into a goddess and a more immortal. And I think that that is awfully symbolic of how much the human psyche struggles with the erotic. Because even when I was like doing the research about this in the medieval or Renaissance times, there was a belief that when you look at a beautiful person, that the image of that person's beauty actually penetrates the blood inside of your eyes and like moves into your blood and veins, and that you could be afflicted and harmed basically by looking at a beautiful person. And so that became, kind of like these seeds of kind of violence based off of, or like these, temptress, or you're so beautiful, or, this kind of like twisted upness inside about perceiving the erotic outside, because humans couldn't cope, literally just couldn't cope with it. And I found that Saturn has a huge connection to the erotic, because there's kind of two basic choices, two pathways with the erotic, is that you either block and repress it, and the erotic is highly connected to shame and repression and punishment and judgment and control in society and internalized, or the erotic is facilitated, supported. And I find, just in my own experience, my own lived experience, and in speaking with people, and just like across myth and story and whatnot, that the erotic is so intense for people to be with. And it has created psychological growth and turmoil, right? Psyche is ultimately experiencing a split from Eros, and she's miserable. So, I mean, symbolically, it's like when we don't feel alive, because Eros is sexuality, but it's also aliveness. So when we don't feel alive, right, like we're not enjoying our life, it's very hard psychologically to deal with that. And so either we're going to, shut down Saturn and numb, or kind of like go under a rock in some sense, or there's some kind of like determination that might emerge of like, what is it going to take to live a life that I value, a life that's in integrity with my, you know, and that it also really begins this personal, like, I think, a belief for everyone that navigating an erotic pathway is a lot about coming back into wholeness, becoming integrated, and that for the erotic to kind of move through us freely, it's going to illuminate all of our patterns and loops and traumas that are not just our personal traumas, but our culturally inherited ones. So instead of just being kind of like free to play and free to enjoy our lives, there's like a whole grid or internal matrix, if you will, that the erotic kind of has to, navigate through. And I think that for a lot of people, like that is a really high, tall order to move through that emergence in one's life, because it's not like, it doesn't necessarily look like a neat, story of just like getting married or something like that. Like there's maybe some, bizarre romances that aren't good on paper. There's maybe some experiences that are a little bit edgy or taboo, or bring on personal shame or have been judged by others. And yeah, it's like we kind of think that the fifth house, for example, Meg Kane, I feel like, has created a lot of wonderful content about this. But the idea that like romance and sex is like the fun house, but for a lot of people, it's not fun. It's like you want it to be fun, you want to enjoy it, but on the way, there's so much suffering and density and grappling to come back into contact with this sense of Psyche and Eros actually being together and not being split. So, yeah, I'll leave that there.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much there. It's interesting because, like, we talked about the second house the last time you were on here, I believe, Unshaming the Second House. So we got into speaking about abundance and life, death, life, and really tapping at like what you have to give. And for me, it's interesting you brought in the square with like the fifth house here. I feel like the abundance pathway and the erotic pathway have been the same thing, you know? I guess it's no surprise, but tapping into, oh my gosh, just like the intense thickness of the trap I had around that for the first half of my adulthood, it just like cracked and a geyser came out. You know, it wasn't like a slow, titrated process. Uranus in the eighth house, I have. Um, and it's sort of like the abundance pathway became the same thing as discovering my erotic side. Because I think it's hard to know, for me at least, it's hard to know what I tapped into giving, to trading with, you know, in the world, if I'm not also tapped into my desire self and like deep honesty and the exposure around that is all the same to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I feel like learning, and I feel like this can be this way for women, like coming into an internal, like felt sense of this hunger and this eroticism, and then externalizing it, like letting it be visible, is so like there's so many conditionings to not do that, or conditionings that that's not safe, or that there's something like gross or shameful or what have you about it. And one of my really big awakenings in the erotic was learning that I can be turned on whenever. That like I didn't have to just be turned on in a sexual context, but that I could be turned on at work. I can be turned on at the grocery store. I can be turned on anywhere, anytime, and that is fine. Like, and I think anatomically, of course, that's different for people with penises because they have, you know, they're not trying to be like hard all the time. But like for me, like that sense of how do I even learn how to navigate my, like the vessel of my body when I'm in that kind of flow state? Because I didn't, you know, before I knew that I was allowed to be turned on like that and just cultivate that, every time the turn on came up, I had these patterns around it, you know, and I was like very horny as a teenager too. So like felt like I had to do something with it. I need to find someone. I need to like, yeah, make something happen over it. And that would create these like cycles of my turn on being scary for me to even have on, because it would bring up all this like need and hunger and like, you know, maybe not so great experiences, like playing that out with people and feeling like it wasn't just something that I could open and unfold and bloom and live inside of, and like getting to learn that it is just this like slow burn and it can be on, and it, I don't have to make it on when it's not, that it just is what it is, but I can cultivate it, has created like a whole different type of way of being. And there's just been so many processes where I've learned how to let myself out, like how to express, how to be in my involuntary, how to like be weird, how to laugh, like how to just express in moments and not literally hold it down in advance and like have my life force so tamped down, and then only have the option of mental strategy of like calculating how to behave, which is
Ooh.
really painful, you know? And it's like I knew what that was like. And as I began, it wasn't exclusively that, you know, I wasn't always living in that zone. But I think that I imagined that like romance or sex or like these particular portals were ways to like come out and be open and be myself, versus learning that I can be turned on and be myself and be awake and alive in all these different areas of my life. And just that we have this birthright in some sense, as beings. And then we also just have to, you know, it brings back the Saturn part, because we also have to learn how to be integrity with our life force, because our life force channels a lot of our addictions, a lot of our patterns. You know, when people have a lot of energy or a lot of sexual energy, like learning how to wield that without suppressing it, it is a learning in of itself. And I just think that a lot of this is kind of like a wild west where it's just like not talked about. That's what I felt like being a teenager. It was just like, don't have sex. Here's like, the information about condoms and STDs, but just like don't do it. And it was like that was a really limited frame because there was no like like there was no conversation around what to do with that energy. And I just think it's not just teenagers or whatever. It's like the kind of collective. There's many just normalized limitations around what sexual energy is for and like the narrow box that it's for. Um, yeah, so it's really like an individuation path in some sense, or yeah, Saturn comes up with that of just like how to integrate kind of the Aquarius side of Saturn, really.
I love Saturn being part of this. Yeah, I what I find so helpful about being connected to my erotic side now, because I do feel like it's every part of my life. I heard a few years ago when I was in an apprenticeship with Venus after a breakup, just like you are erotic whether you're partnered or not. Like it just opened up this picture away from partnering as the condition in which we practice our erotic side, which is what I hear you, I feel like you're saying. And that was so helpful then for releasing it basically into everything. Because then I feel like as you practice it emergently, right? Like you're saying, it's something that we live into. And we're doing this without a lot of templates. Uh, it makes everything so clear because it's like if you're not that you always have energy for what turns you on. Um, it's just there. And so it the like subtleties around noticing what is not alive for me anymore, like what is not erotic for me anymore regarding relationships, work, location, habits, anything. It then can become such a helpful zone for where there can be updates and refinements to keep like the container, thinking of it in Saturn way, the container of your life pumping, throbbing. Obviously, there are things that we don't want to do that we have to do. But there's a whole lot of things that I previously saw from like a drained and depleted place that I don't see those to-do list items that way anymore because they're serving something that turns me on. Does that resonate?
It does, yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking like I had like a really big like erotic summer, spring and summer. Like I was in a sexological intimacy coaching training and I was having this really amazing experience of visionary experiences and writing songs out of it. And then kind of just synchronistically running into this man on the street who I knew already. I had met him before, but he showed up right after I'd had this really clear, like super strong vision from my pussy about exactly what I wanted in that moment in my life. And then I just run into him. And throughout connecting with him, he was embodying the things from the song. And I was having like the best sex of my life, basically. And it was really exciting for me because I was also really co creating that. And I feel like earlier in my life, I would depend on, I'd try to find these extraordinary, spectacular lovers and like kind of externalize my erotic opportunities by finding these like hyper special people. And I just felt like so co creative this summer in terms of the internal openings and visionary states I had, and like the grounding that I gained in my body, and the way that I was able to give voice to my emergent experience, to be able to like dance with someone in a way that was so, you know, like I think that having the best sex of your life is a reflection of being in the present moment. So that happened. And also the connection revealed to me like what it was serving, like what the purpose of it was. And it also definitely like it came to a close. And by the end of the relationship or the connection, the message that I was left with was like learning how to enjoy my mundane, everyday life. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is just like romancing the mundane. I had like an experience the other day of just like doing things around the house, like the laundry. And when I tuned in to my inner state, there was just like this low level pulse of ecstasy that was so cool to experience there. And so part of why I learned that I had to romance the mundane was that the person that I attracted was vibrating with me synchronistically whenever I was like high, whenever I was like in my best and brightest, and then would just kind of disappear when I was feeling sad or low. And it was becoming like a weird computer simulation experience, because if he was distant and I was sad about that, because that was triggering attachment stuff for me, if I just got into a better state of consciousness, he would magically reappear. But when I talked to him about needs or desires at that level, like he just didn't go there with me. So I basically had the choice of like, I can keep, connecting with this person who only connects with a part of me, or I can let it go. And so on the other side of it, I've been just in this deep shadow excavation of like what that connection brought up for me. But I just kind of saw the ways that like the excitement of that, it's like I could definitely let the house get messy, or like leave dishes piling up in the sink, or just like fuck it, forget all that kind of stuff. And now just coming way back inward and finding a way to be turned on by the mundane things that were not turning me on before, but in service, in this vision or dream of attracting and resonating with a partner that I can do life with. And that, kind of having my Eros be more mapped to all parts of my life, and not just these special peak experiences that I love so much.
Mm.
So that's a little tangent that
Wow. Thank you for
that.
sharing. I'm curious how like what you've been learning from the actual sexological coaching training through to like these actual lived experiences with other humans and with yourself. Like, where is your work shifting in relationship to that?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm mapping is that with astrology, it's the study of fate and fortune in some sense. And people have been philosophically trying to grapple with that. And my thought or experience has been that when we shift our consciousness, like when unconscious things become conscious, when we have illumination or epiphany, that we can change our fate in some sense, that we stop playing out patterns, or like we gain, and whether that was preordained fate that we would find this or whatever, I'm not super worried about. But there was just that idea that like through consciousness, you can change your life. And now I think that there's actually something happening as well, so much in the body, in terms of our eroticism is also connected to our wounding, right? And our stuck and stored pain and trauma. And that's where people have these experiences of calling in like what we call trauma bonds, are these like hot, full of chemistry experiences that rub up against their wounding. And that in order to stop being in those karmic cycles or whatnot, that's similar to consciousness being part of astrology and how we might change our patterns, that having more skills around navigating the erotic, because this training was really powerful for me because I felt like it slowed down an ocean wave for me that let me learn a lesson that I feel like I've been trying to learn for years. Because basically, I have, Mercury retrograde in Pisces in 29 degrees, conjunct Venus in Pisces in 29 degrees. And I've just had a number of bizarre, otherworldly, magical, romantic, erotic experiences. And it's been a place of great magic and confusion for me in my life. And essentially, there have been times in my life where I've used discipline to like, oh, that's not a good choice. I'm not going to do that. So I've like used this kind of like, I'll just put a barrier there and just like not do the dumb thing. But I learned through this training how to actually experience a felt sense of meeting the emotions, meeting the sensations inside of the impact of like, ouch, that hurt. I just learned something and I don't want to do that again, as opposed to
Mm.
using my consciousness to avoid the lesson at all. And so I think that for people that, a lot of people, we get very triggered in our relationships because that's where there's a lot of growth material. And we don't always have tools for how to be with that. So we either just go in these blowout crazy cycles with people, or we call off dating or like avoid intimacy, versus what it's like to actually learn how to piece through and work with the material that other people, through colliding with other people, like it gets brought into our spheres. And so I just think that my mapping has shifted of reality, where I've just gained a lot of somatic and kind of erotic literacies that, weaving that back into astrology, it's necessitated that I'm like reteaching astrology. Like, I have, an astrology intensive that I taught for 8 years, and I'm going back and like reworking the entire thing because my
Wow.
updates, there's just a lot of updates basically that have come through, and I'm adding somatics to it. So yeah, I think in some sense it's just shown me like I've been mapping the world through the cosmos from a young age, and essentially like getting deeper into this embodiment and erotic pathways has opened up more root mapping, more body mapping. And I'm
Mhm.
fascinated by the way that those two things blend. And I also think it could be really important for people that love astrology, because I think that there's plenty of people that maybe overuse their psychic gifts and try to like, control connection, or overuse the tarot when they're nervous about someone. And there's a lot of content that's happening there that I think, there's more power and agency to be found in the body at that point. And if people have really developed psychic maps, it's like, okay, let me look at the transit. Let me figure out this guy's chart. Let me like navigate all this heady kind of upper chakra stuff, when the thing that you're really going for is like feeling safe and landed in your body and able to like connect with another person, which I think is so much more animal. But
Mm.
wanting to do,
Mm.
having an integration of that psychic and, visionary connection. So now I'm, yeah, now I'm like seeking to really bridge a lot of those realms in my own life and in my work.
It's so important. Yeah, when you were speaking about the chakras there, I was seeing this picture of emergence as, in that case, like becoming approachable to the lower chakras, and their information.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of a, is it a stereotype or something, where like there's the person who's like really psychic and magical, like mystical, but like has a string of just like, I don't know, dating con people, or just like people that are like very like shadow mirrors or something like that. And it's like, how did they not know? They're so open, they're so psychic. And it's like, well, those centers don't purely afford you the earthly experiences you seek. Like
Mm.
to be able to know, have that sense, that intuitive, like primal awareness of what's happening and be able to represent yourself at the moment and like know your boundaries and limits is like very lower chakra as well. So you can definitely see someone's higher self and see their potential and be like disconnected from your lower body.
Yeah, I certainly resonate with that for my own experience. Um, yeah, really just opening up into the lower half of my body, really like creating a home, I would say, for the spirit parts of me, like everything to be able to come in. It was like, oh, yes, we've decided to live here. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to be here. Okay. You know,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of human beings, the residue of what we experienced as kids and growing up in this world, it makes sense that there were parts of us that were just kind of like climbing up our chakras, trying to get out, you know, almost. And then in adulthood, learning how to come back down that ladder and make room for being here with all of it. Um, that's very Saturn too. It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, I know exactly what you mean. I like connect it to the moon a lot too, because the moon is about embodiment and fortune and like, yeah, experiences incarnating through the body. And I just think it's really magical and beautiful that parts of us don't actually go away. Like it's certainly helpful when parts of us are nurtured from a young age and given safety, but parts of us that aren't just kind of go into shadow and they are retrievable later on. Like they don't disappear. And I think that that's really kind of miraculous that like we can have like retrieval of these parts.
Yeah, you're reminding me a couple days ago, a friend was telling me about something really sudden and scary for them. And there was some similarity energetically to the experience I had with around divorce. And I shared that for what it's worth, the me who showed up to take over under those conditions that I was so primally afraid of is like one of my most favorite me's I've ever met, you know? Sometimes sudden change, you know, is what shakes that awake.
Yeah. I love this image that like we've seen you and seen your like astrology content on the scene, and that there was a version of you before that. And then you had this kind of like big awakening in multiple ways. And then like that rippled out into the internet and it's the Britain that we know. But you had this other life before then.
Yeah.
It's really cool to put it in that frame.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, embodiment is a powerful thing because when I feel into remembering how I quote unquote used to be, you know, it's just it's like shocking that I walked that way, thought that way, saw the world that way, saw myself that way, believed all those things, you know, because it feels so far away from me now, but it's not, but it's true, you know, like I know that
I
it's true.
really I like it. It feels like a seed, and like the husk breaking and something sprouting. And it feels kind of like we could be in those moments now, or the listeners can be in that moment now where you're like living your life and this whole other thing can emerge and break from where you currently are. And I think, I mean, sometimes we're like avoiding that. We do not want that to happen. But other times it's like we're like praying for that. We're like living in this paradigm and we really want it to break open and sprout into something more fruitful and beyond what we're currently experiencing.
Yeah, thank you. I love this husk picture because it takes me back to how emergence feels to me versus like the potential version that's out there. Because I feel like even if I wanted change before, I thought I had to discipline and clean and force myself to become who that person had to be in order to be okay here. And that kind of intense situation that I went through around the time of my divorce allowed this other thing to come up from within that was like, let's do it this way. Like, how about this instead? And a lot of that was through learning about my erotic body, and then that force starts to guide the way and create resonance with other people around you who then help you also. So it's kind of amazing. It is really quite amazing. Um, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you so much coming on here today. What do you have anything you want to share that's coming up for you that you can invite listeners into or ways they can connect to you?
Yeah, so I have a new updated website, sabrinamonarch.com. And on it, you can find a free Pluto course. That is, yeah, my teachings about a planet that I've specialized in for more than a decade now. I'm also teaching the Felt Sense School of Evolutionary Astrology, which is my new course. And my offerings for readings are on my website. And I'm also doing a new coaching oracle body that's combining astrology, emotional freedom technique, and sexological intimacy coaching. And I'm envisioning that it's for people that, have these very deep inner worlds. And, the more unique or strange you are, the less experience you've had being really mirrored and seen, unless you have always been surrounded by attuned people. And so I think that without that attunement, it's harder to be really integral in our own signal. And so I found that sexological intimacy coaching practices really help with stabilizing and attuning to these updated self concepts and doing that in connection, so that you can represent yourself and, yeah, share who you are in these moments that we can be flooded inside of, like inside of intimacy, inside of setting a boundary, inside of having desire. Like there's a lot of other content that can come online. And so just learning how to stabilize and slow down and get more granular with all that material, is what that coaching is about. Um, but yeah, it's for the deep sensitive people that want to be more connected, and have experienced maybe some kind of isolation from being that way. So that's what I embody all of this.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a cool offering. How exciting. Yeah, the that and speaking of the free Pluto class you have, that Pluto and the nodes conversation we had on Moon to Moon was like one of the top 10 most downloaded episodes ever of Moon to Moon.
Wow. That's
Because
amazing. I'm glad people want to learn about Pluto and the
me
nodes.
too.
It's
I think
so
we
key. It's
definitely
like your whole karmic story summarized.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like we really connect through the Plutonic and all that's around it. Thank you so much for coming on here today and chatting with me about the
Thank
erotic.
you,
I
Britten.
always love
Thank you for
talking
these
to you.
amazing invitations. Like, it's such a pleasure.
Always. Thank you, Sabrina. It's always so fun to be with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with Moon to Moon. Listeners, if you are resonating with Sabrina's voice, inviting you to check out how to connect with her through the links in the show notes. For all of y'all listening in the window where I'm still having the doors open in the Founders Day launch for Living Emergence, when I'm also holding Mystics Making Money #3 on Vulture Magic, Hunger, Death, and the Erotic. And when I'm also holding the free series, The 9 Boredoms of the Rightful Baddie, you can also find links to all those things in the show notes. I'm hoping that you will come explore, come experiment, come play with us. This is a beautiful space that will enhance and expand the lives of everyone who enters it. You will feel more abundant. You will feel more agency. You will feel more authenticity. You will feel more ease. And you will feel more fulfillment with your living experiment in being here as a human being if you come in and are resonant with this space. I'm sure it's not for everyone, but for those it's meant for, I know that it will be something that you will be so fucking glad you said yes to. It will not be a thing where you can look back and regret, because you're only moving forward with the yes to that timeline, to the timeline that it's putting you on. Inviting you to trust that yes. Please reach out to my team if you have any questions. info@brittenlarue.com. We'll be so glad to greet you on the other side of the doors. Cheers.